Chief.
Okay. I move to accept tonight's agenda with the amendment of removing number 7 under old business. Second.
All in favor? Next up, regular meeting minutes of approval for January 27th. I was not here, so I can't vote, so I would entertain a motion.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, I can't vote.
Took you off.
Next up, minutes for the January 27th MOA GBOS quarterly meeting minutes approval.
I so move.
I second.
Favor?
Aaron was on it.
Public is encouraged to ask questions, provide comments. Please raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged. Please take side conversations to the foyer. The municipal election is in April. Mail-in ballots, GBSA items on the agenda are GBOS seats D and E, and the bond package for the new community building to replace fire hall, garage, and Little Bears. My understanding is we only have one applicant for the 2 seats.
That's my understanding. You can apply for writing candidates until, I think, 7 days before the election.
And you're?
Not running.
Okay. So that means we need to entertain people from the audience or from Girdwood in general to volunteer and submit resumes to the board. And then the way this works is we approve it and then we send it up to the
I
mayor.
think that would be after the election.
Yes, after the election.
At this point, they can still submit their name for
Yes.
writing.
Yes, you can still be a writer. You have to actually state your intention to be a writing candidate in order to be counted. And that can be done up to 7 days before the election.
Okay, so I stand corrected. So anybody who wants to be on the board, you can submit to be a write-in candidate until 7 days before the election. Then once the election happens, if we have nobody volunteer, we'll be looking for volunteers, and then we approve it, and the mayor, then we send it up for the mayor to approve. What else? Introductions, presentations, and reports. Subcommittee reports, 3 minutes each. Trails Committee. Carolyn.
Hey everybody, Carolyn Brody, Chair of Trails Committee. We had a regular meeting on Tuesday, February 4th. We began with announcements. Pretty exciting that Mike Edgington had brought to our attention that the Assembly has a resolution being discussed, which provides a list of the trails, well, quite a few trails in Anchorage, that the ones we were excited about, the ones in Girdwood, that they were going to vote on closing to tracking. These would include Abe's Trail, Beaver Pond Trail, California Creek, Crow Pass, Winter Creek, and Upper Winter Creek, as well as the upper parts of the Iditarod Trail. These trails all have portions that go through either state land or Chugach State Park or National Forest, and tracking in the past has been allowed on these trails, so it's very exciting if we can get them closed. Most of our other trails are all on HLB land where tracking is already not allowed. So. Under old business, we discussed the hand tram, including review of management plan ideas. We'll be discussing those later in the agenda here tonight. Number 2, we discussed our work for next summer on the Virgin Creek Falls Trail. We've been discussing this for quite a few months, and we passed a motion which read, Girdwood Trails Committee moves to approve Virgin Creek Falls Trail improvements as discussed as a priority work project for 2020. And we're actually, that's also further down the agenda tonight, asking for a resolution of support. We did review and discuss the proposed updates to the Trails Management Plan that the subcommittee has been working on for the last few months, chapters 4, 5, and 6. This is a lot of information. If you want to know more about it, just look in the packet. They're available online. We'll be voting on those changes at our March meeting, so please come if you're interested. Winter grooming's been going well, other than that one of the snow machines broke down. I don't know if that's fixed yet.
Yes, it's fixed.
Great. One of the main things we did at our meeting was our formation of the Girdwood Trails Plan Subcommittee. We are still going to determine our self-governance and structure with the help of Holly from Pedal AK. She'll facilitate our meetings and provide notes and such. We did figure out when we are going to meet the first Tuesday of each month from 6 to 7:30, so this will be right before Trails Committee. So our Trails Committee meetings will be bumped back to 7:30 during the duration of our Trails Plan. And yeah, please come to any of those meetings to learn more about that. We are, other than that, I think the only thing that isn't going to be discussed tonight on the agenda, under updates from some of our subcommittees, Girdwood Mountain Bike Alliance wants to apply for a KMTA grant and needs a letter from support from Trails Committee to improve the Small House Trail. For those of you that don't know, that's the very first trail they worked on. They want to eliminate the way it currently exits onto the Nordic Trail and just make a different route. And so they'll be back for a meeting in March. I think that's all.
Any questions for Carolyn? Thank you. Next up, land use, Brian Burnett. I saw him.
I think he's in the foyer. I think I just kicked him out.
Should I go on and come back? Okay, next up, legislative report. And we have John Wilton on the phone.
Good evening. Sorry I couldn't make it down. I don't have a whole lot to add. We do have public hearing on HLB's 5-year work plan at our meeting this coming on Tuesday the 25th. So if you guys have any comments on that, do you guys send things in, or how do you handle that?
Public comment is the way that I've handled it.
Just as individuals?
Yeah, just as individuals. I don't think we've done I don't think land use does, and I don't think we have in the past.
Yeah, well, that's fine. Just get word out.
Yeah.
That's fine.
What else? Anything else, John?
Well, that's about it. I hope you have great snow.
Well, it's not looking so good right now. It's a little warm.
Little rain.
Not too bad.
You lose your Gore-Tex?
No, it's perfect Girdwood weather. We're back to normal. So, thanks for calling in, John.
Sure.
Anybody have any
Yeah,
questions?
I'll stay on. I just wanted to hear some of those last issues you'll be getting to, so if it's okay with you, I'll just listen in.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I'll just ask, anybody have any questions for Assemblyman? Hearing none, we'll go on.
Thanks.
Imagine
Back
Girdwood.
to land use.
Oh, land use, thank you. Brian?
Thank you. Sorry, I was tied up in the back there. You guys heard me yap in the way back there. So we had the Girdwood Land Use Committee meeting on February 10th. We were able to get a presentation from Crystal Hoke, and I believe we're going to see another presentation from Crystal this evening, yes? We had a presentation from Crystal Hoke about the Community Land Trust and explaining what was involved in Community Land Trust. That was an interesting topic of conversation and a possibility for some land options here in Girdwood for affordable housing. We also heard our committee reports. Carolyn was here for Trails Committee. We did not hear from Land Use Committee. Kyle updated us on the Little Bears rebuild project, and Mike updated us via email on the groups that he's involved in. For old business, we were able to consider the Girdwood Brewing Company request for an LUC recommendation for GBOS resolution of support for the brewery's amended conditional use permit and the amended special land use permit. There was a motion made along those lines recommending a resolution of support, and that motion passed 15 in favor with no one opposed that evening. Additionally, we received an update from Kyle on the Gunnysack Mine multi-family housing project going on. Kyle updated us on the status of the project note, and we want to note that no one from the project development was present at the meeting to hear community concerns or to respond to any concerns that were raised at the meeting. The neighbors that were attending the meeting were frustrated with the lack of transparency on the project. I think that's a polite way of putting it. We came out of that with the Girdwood Land Use Committee moved to submit a formal letter of objection to the Gunnysack Mine Road multifamily housing project variance request. The motion passed unanimously, 14 in favor. There was no one, and as I mentioned, no one was in favor of that, nobody was opposed to that motion. We had a quick discussion on short-term rental impacts. We talked about historic preservation real quick. For new business, Jack Spratt is going to be requesting an LUC recommendation for GBOS resolution of support for a variance for off-street parking, and we're going to have that in front of us this evening if I'm not mistaken, and I will leave it at that. Any questions?
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Next up, Imagine Girdwood, the Girdwood Area Plan update.
Since Erin and Amanda are not here, at least I can't see them, I will speak briefly to this. We've changed around our process a little bit. What we had been doing was seeking input from various stakeholders about what they'd like to see in vision, goals, and policies around a number of topic areas. And I think giving people a blank sheet of paper and saying, put smart words here, is kind of intimidating. So what we've actually done is swap the process around, and now we're coming up with draft vision, goals, and policies for 4 main topic areas, plus a general set of, a general vision. And we will take those drafts and present those to the stakeholders and go through a review process to expand them and change them and adapt them. And then when we get to the end of that review process, we'll then present them to the community more generally. In an ideal, perfect world, we would get to present them in the late spring. It is unlikely we'll meet that goal, so we'll probably end up doing that presentation in the early fall. Although I shouldn't write it off, it's a possibility we may have a meeting in May. We will know by the end of March whether we can meet the May deadline or not. We may have a town hall, or we may have something that's just socializing it around the community. Our next meeting is on February the 26th. We will be discussing the draft vision, goals, policy document on the 26th. It's February the 26th, 6 p.m. in this room. Everybody is welcome. The more the merrier. It's fun anyway. Any questions?
Thanks, Mike. Girdwood Manager Report, Kyle. Oh, I have my check marks. I'm going down here. I'm going too fast. Claire, the most important, the funnest report.
Hi, everybody. I'm Claire. I'm the library manager. Library was open for under 64 hours and had 2,271 visitors for the month of January. In case you haven't heard, our big news is that we've gone fine-free. There are no more overdue fines on any Anchorage Public Library materials. Yay! That also means we will waive past fines as well. So if you have any, no judgment, come to the library and we'll waive them. We just want to make sure all your information's up to date and we'll take care of that for you. Other libraries may have overdue fines. So just please be aware of the item you have. It's a book, it's a movie from somewhere else. You could still get fines from that. But for Anchorage Public Library materials, we're good to go. So that's fun. We do want the materials back on time. We do want them back. That's always, the number one question is, okay, will you get them back? We're gonna charge you the full item cost, which is usually more than you'd pay at a bookstore or Amazon. So it's like $40 for a book or for a movie. So we'll charge you the full amount and a processing fee to get that item back. But as soon as you give it back, it's gone. No more fines. So that's a little motivation for you to give the materials back because we do want them back and somebody may be waiting for them on the other side. So that's our big news in case you hadn't. As always, we have baby time Thursdays at 12 for kids 18 months and under. Family story time Fridays at 11. That's our all ages story time under 5. We Be Jammin' is this Saturday at 12. That's our music story time. It's fun. We dance and play instruments. I have lots of programming coming for spring break. Not everything's typed down yet because I'm still waiting for some confirmations. But I'm pretty sure we're going to do a Milano's cookie taste test. So they have surprisingly a lot of flavors.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, it's like a whole shelf. So yeah, keep tuned. Stay tuned for spring break. We'll put it on Facebook and then we'll have our youth calendar in the library. So stop by and just get that if you need it. Proctoring, I proctor for students taking online classes or you don't want to drive into town, I can proctor a test for you. It does take some time for me to get approved by the college or university, so please call me or stop in a couple weeks beforehand so we can get that all settled before your test is due tomorrow, because I can't help you if it's due tomorrow. So yeah, proctoring, programs, no fines. Facebook.com/APLCare. Questions? I'm gonna move today, can you tell?
If we wait long enough, will other libraries stop
You
generating
didn't
fines?
hear from me. It's probably gonna happen, yeah. Statewide. I don't know when, but it's probably gonna snowball.
Good.
Yeah, there's already rumblings of some bigger libraries going in that direction. Yeah. But I still want your book back.
I know.
We've talked before.
I've been feeling very sheepish during
Thanks, Claire. Now, not to get ahead of myself, manager report, Kyle Kelly.
I'm Kyle Kelly, the Girdwood Service Area Manager. Start with parks. Maintenance such as trash removal, mud mitt replacement, things like that are being handled by Margaret and I during this winter. And we want to really give applause to Girdwood. We just went out and did trash last week. We do it weekly, sometimes twice a week. And the mud mitts are being used like crazy. The bags are coming out extremely heavy, almost caution for our backs. But we really appreciate seeing that happen out there. There's a lot of users in the trail and people are using that. And as much as we can keep dog waste out, especially out of the meadows, is really good for the environment. So we appreciate everybody doing that there. We are starting to get ready for the spring. We're getting our invasive weed contract together. We're also working on our turf and trash and a few other things. And we'll be putting out soon for our seasonal position. And then our campground host position has been refilled this year with Emily Maxwell back for her third year there. So, and with our seasonal position, we give first right of refusal to the person who had it last year, David Parr. If he doesn't want it, we'll reopen for interviews from there. We are working through quite a few things. We try to keep up on trails, especially with blowdowns and other work that needs to be done. I'm sure we'll see some things with the weather we have now out there, but let us know if you're seeing problems as you're out on the trail. And we're working with the skate park committee right now. We have a fundraiser for them on March 7th and 6th, or 6th and 7th. It's a showdown, throwdown. It's a great event. They have sort of an evening activity for 12 and up with the rail jam up there, and then they have have a nice activity on Saturday for the kids from basically almost 3 on up to 12, and all the registration fees go to the skate park. So we really appreciate Alyeska's Resort partnership on this, and then those on volunteering on the Friends of the Skate Park to pull it all off. So that will be happening in 2 weeks on those ones. Everything else is pretty much closed, but we're just getting prepared for when the spring does hit. As we mentioned with the Girdwood Trails Committee, we had a meeting with them. Tonight we'll have a discussion about the hand tram and the different things we're working through there to get that reopened in the spring. And then from our office, we're just planning and starting to get materials ready for spring projects. We've also started to the process of hiring 2 interns as our trail crew for the summer. Last year we had 2 interns from the SCA. This year we'll do that again. It was really successful last year with them, even though one got called up to military halfway through. The other one, he almost worked for two of them the way he did the jobs that he did. So we'll be getting 2 more interns this year, and we're trying to partner again with the Forest Service to house them at their bunkhouse down there, and that looks pretty favorable as well. So it's a nice partnership to have with the Forest Service. GBOS nonprofit grants, we're receiving the revision forms for grantees for 2020 grants, and year-end reports have been received or to be completed early in 2020. So we're wrapping up 19 and going into 20 there. And then Parks and Rec has a new administrator who's helping us with these as well. We have several grants out there that we are working through, but one of the ones I'll point out is we look very favorable to receive another RTP grant for $75,000 for the lower Iditarod, so we can finish that section down there. We attended the meeting. We scored the 2nd highest score behind the U.S. Forest Service, who had, I think, for the Upper Winter Creek, I believe. So we're very happy about that, and what we just have to wait for is the Federal Highway Department to approve it. It's all made off of fuel tax that funds this grant, so they're the final approval for us. And so we hope to hear that soon so we can get started planning on that project for the spring. If we get that $75,000, we'll be able to complete that whole section of Iditarod from basically Old Town up to the end of end of Cornelius Road here. So yeah, it'd be nice. As always, Margaret does a wonderful job of keeping social media and our websites up to date with our meetings and different things going on. Switching over the roads, it has been a very busy winter, I have to say. 2020 has been, we've been dealing with continuous snowfall and just keeping up with that and responding and keeping things ready. And then finally, we've got a warm front that has arrived. So tomorrow, the contractor will be here. We're going to try to peel down asphalt streets. We'll probably be peeling down some pack in neighborhoods, but we'll also be sanding pretty steadily all day into the next day as it goes forward. So if you do have a slick slot, feel free to call us, but our priorities are hills first, and bus route, and then main roads, and then we get into the small side roads after that. So, and then sometimes we have to repeat on the hills again, just with the way this pack is, the sand will sink in, and so we'll just be sanding until we get it to grip out. So, but since the last meeting, it's been snow removal, preparation for the next storm, and then sanding going forward. So it's nice to have a busy winter. It's sometimes overwhelming. The pedestrian the Alyeska Highway and Eagleoff High Tower crosswalk light. We think we've finished the problems that are out there. We experienced the lights not working during some really cold days, especially when it got down to -10, and they found that the power source, so the main power comes in, it goes into this power source, which then sends out the signals. Those were undersized for the coldness that we're getting, so the manufacturer sent new power sources, and the contractor installed them at no additional cost. And since then, we haven't had any issues. But if you continue to see any issues, let us know. It's still in the trial phase, and we're trying to get through all those to get them fixed. Budgets, just jumping in the budgets, we have an undesignated fund balance of $335,000. That is from the last audit, which was done in July of 31. And we are looking at surpluses through mostly all our operating budgets, so we should see that undesignated account go up. And we will have another audit once they close the books after first quarter, so that won't be till July that we know the new sum, but we can probably estimate where we're at by looking at the year-end books on all our operating budgets for 19. And then January, we spent $67,000 with the contractor. That's definitely the highest in the last 2 years. The previous year in 18 was 37 and 45,019. But this was an abnormal winter compared to those. Maybe more regular on the history of Girdwood, but yes, we were quite busy there with that. And so far, we've only spent 8% of our budget for the year with roads. With parks, we've only spent 1% because we don't do a lot right now, but that will start to pick up as we go forward. With parks, we have a capital reserve fund of $135,000. We do have a contribution to make out of capital, which will bring it up to about $250,000 when we make that move from capital, from operating to capital. With roads, we have a project fund or a capital fund of $636,000. And then with the community room for this room, we have $74,000. And then with the pedestrian light, right now we spent $185 of the $283,000 for that project. We will probably be making a final payment to the contractor soon, which will wrap that up. And then once we make all our payments, we're going to submit that to the DOT, and they should reimburse us for all that money for the project. So we'll be doing that hopefully within the month. With police, we've only spent $3,200 of it. That's mostly on rent. And we just made our first payment for police for January just last week. And then with fire, we've spent $198,000 of the $1.1 million, so 17% of that budget in the first quarter drop to the fire department. And then their capital reserve right now is at $392,000 for the year. At some point, we request to have a work session with GBOS to review the 2019 budget and the progress reports, basically give a summary of what we did in 19, and then you can see all the financials. The books have pretty much been closed out. They haven't been fully audited, but I think for us, we feel very confident where we're at. So we'd like to present to you at some point. So we'd like to find a calendar and just sort of dedicate a meeting to that discussion at some point. So I think what Margaret might do is she'll probably send out an email in the coming days and try to narrow down a date that works for the 5-year. And then with that, that's that. Any questions?
I've got two questions. One is, do we expect an audit of the undesignated funds in the near future?
No, they don't do those. They'll do an audit once first quarter's done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So there's no point delaying the meeting on the budget progress until after that?
I always find out in July.
Okay, understood. My second question is, I'm trying to remember when the road contract is due for renewal.
Yes, so it's a good point. The road contract is due for renewal next fall. The way the calendar works is that it's going to probably be sometime in November, just the way the contract ends. I put a request in the purchasing and administration to rebid that contract in July, so that I can have full confidence that whoever wins the new bid is prepared and ready to go. Last time, a fall inspection, so what we do is we put it out the bid, people submit their bid, and then the lowest bidder, I go inspect all their equipment. And it's kind of nerve-wracking from my side that they may not be ready for the first storm. And so if we can bid it, know who the contractor is, they can get their stuff together. And so by the time they take over the contract, they should be able to walk in here and do it. Cooley could win it again. With the new contract, we're going to tighten up the ages of equipment. And so we'll be bringing up requirements. So if any Cooley wins, they're going to have to buy new equipment to fulfill the contract.
Is that because of the breakdown?
Yeah.
Case that we've had?
So the way our age works is that it's reasonable for the contractor to afford it, but as you go through 5 years, that equipment expires out, so we have to bump it up, and they have to bump it up as well. So for example, a grader, my requirement going forward is that the grader, one grader of the two cannot be more than 5 years old. And probably the second grader can't be more than 8. Right. So they just break down over time.
So is that 2020, you said?
Yes.
This year?
We will be up by November, there will be a new contract in place for the next 5 years.
Okay.
Anything else? Thanks for all your hard work on the roads.
Yeah, no problem.
The roads look good. Do a good job. Okay. second. Go find my agenda. That one's caught. Next up, supervisor reports. Public safety. My name's on there. We had a meeting in 1st of January with the Public Safety Action Committee, and we decided to, instead of having monthly meetings, to make them quarterly. We decided that there wasn't a lot on the agendas that we were having, and so unless somebody brings up, we can always have another meeting and get one out there if anybody has an issue with the policing or anything that's public safety we have going on, but we didn't feel like it was necessary to have monthly meetings. Essentially, for me, that means Whittier policing option seems to be working. We don't have a lot of people come to these meetings complaining, so that's a good thing. So, other than that, I can't think of too much. We keep saying we're going to talk about the speed limit on Crow Creek Road to somebody. We need to do that.
One thing that has worked out, we've had a great success with it this last week. We tagged probably 8 to 9 vehicles over the last week. We towed 3 of them. We have a new tow company, Fred's Towing, and they have a great app where I can submit the picture, the vehicle ID, and then I can track the vehicle until either it's repossessed by the owner or sold off the auction. And so, yeah, we had these derelict cars in Town Square that we couldn't get anybody to come. We finally got a hold of Fred's, and they've been really responsive to our needs. And Whittier Police also, within the last 2 weeks, has used them, I think, 4 different times, one for attempted vehicle stealing snow machines, and then 3 DUIs. And so it's been working out. So, and they're very eager to have the business in Girdwood. So yeah.
They're out of Anchorage?
They're out of Anchorage, South Anchorage. So they get down here within 45 minutes. And they're good. And I can see when they're actually dispatched, when they get here, when they actually are hooking and towing and going back to town, and when it has all the times.
Wow, it's like better than your Uber.
Better than your Uber. Yep. It basically is an Uber app for tow trucks.
Is that, we don't have any kind of contract, it's just they're interested in the business?
Yeah, so we do have basically a simple contract in that if they can't sell the vehicle at auction or retain the owner that paid for it, say it's a really junk car, like somebody we've seen some of those in Town Square where people just leave them, we have to pay $375 for the disposal fee. So that's them wrecking the paperwork and all those things. So they'll send me a bill and we'll do that.
That's great news.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes.
How's it going forward? I don't see the police chief here. You talked to him lately?
I did, he couldn't make it tonight.
Anything
Yep,
news there? Or everything's going fine as far as
things are going fine. He had court in the morning.
And like I talked about the Public Safety Action Committee, so next up, roads and utility. James, anything else to add?
I don't think so. Kyle covered it all.
Parks and Rec, Cemetery, Christina.
I wanted to reiterate some of the things that Carolyn put in her report. The Trails Committee meetings are shifting in order to accommodate the Girdwood Trails Plan. So I want to reiterate that if you're interested in participating and weighing in on how Girdwood's trails are going to look in the next decade or so, it's the first Tuesday of every month, so it'll be March 3rd at 6 p.m. in this room, and then the Trails Committee regular meeting will follow on at 7:30 after that. We did select a subcommittee that will help govern the process, but the public is still welcome to come in and participate in the conversation and let us know what you think the goals and objectives are. Very similar to what's going on in the Imagine Girdwood that Mike reported on. At the Girdwood Trails Committee meeting, which again, 7:30, Monday, 3rd of March, we're talking about a lot of trail priorities and where we think we need some maintenance this summer. So if you have your favorite trail and you think it's going to need something for however you recreate down it, please, by all means, come in and weigh in. And then finally, as we get into the Girdwood Mountain Bike Association letter of support tonight, just wanted to point out for anybody listening in on Radio Land now that the Girdwood Mountain Bike Association is permitted to use that land by the Heritage Land Bank, and part of their permit is that they are required to do maintenance on existing trails before constructing new trails. So this isn't anything new, and is in support and accordance with their permitted activities in that area. That's it.
Any questions? Thanks, Christina.
You're welcome.
Fire Department, Aaron.
Let's see, is Michelle here? She is, okay. I'll just give a brief summary, then you can come up. We resumed the AFD contract meetings last week, and it was kind of a regroup meeting after a few months hiatus, working out the audit items. And so we're basically, the draft contract is in good shape as far as the verbiage goes. The next step is to provide AFD a cost, and so that's what we're going to be working on in the next month or so. The Board of Directors is working on scheduling their next meeting, which I think we're going to talk about that cost at. Should be in the next couple weeks. We don't have a date yet, so that's all I have. Michelle?
Hello, Michelle Weston, Fire Chief. So the good news is right now is that for those 70 people that don't have power, Chugach Electric just texted me and said they're on the road. So you hopefully have power soon, right? If anybody's in those 70 people. Good news that things that have happened is for the first time, I've been here for a couple of years, almost a couple of years now, and we've had 23 people start, and every time we have up to 8 people start, we have one Girdwood member. This time, on Saturday, we've got 8 people starting, and 6 of them are from Girdwood. So it's a huge thing, and there's 6 people, some relatives also starting, and it's going to be really good. I think they don't have a lot of experience, but they have a lot of heart, and they're people that are stable in the community and aren't trying to get jobs at AFD. So I'm super excited about that. So, we'll train them up, and hopefully this is giving us some bench strength because of the 5 that we lost to AFD in January. The other good news is that our ISO rating officially came back. The report came back, and we're still at 2.4, which affects everybody's residential and commercial insurance rating if they have a insurance carrier that follows that process. And then we have been super busy. We're on run 62, so that's a lot of runs. So 36 for January, run 62 so far, and we were over 500 last year. Some thank yous. Thank you to Girdwood Brewery for fundraising for us, and thank you to Coast Pizza also for fundraising for us. And then thank you to Alyeska Resort. They're doing a responder wellness ski first Wednesday of every month for law enforcement and firefighters and dispatchers, because we have had a rash of suicides going on, not in Girdwood, but sort of nationwide for firefighters, so that is actually having a wellness thing or an outlet for people. We're seeing in our industry a lot of ramping up of behavioral health support to each other because of the suicides that are going on. So with that, any questions? Has Silvertip being down and the road being closed sometimes impacted the number of dispatches you've done south of Girdwood? Yes, we've had some, well, the road is, I would say that the road conditions are different than they have been in the past. So we're still trying to go when we can. Yeah. But yeah, definitely there is a difference in road conditions lately. So, yeah. When I was down in Juneau a couple of weeks ago, or last week, I guess it was, for the Fire Chiefs Conference, last week, for Fire Chiefs Conference, the Kenai Chiefs and I were talking to Senator Michichi again about improving cell coverage and along that corridor, so that was good. So, yeah. Questions? Okay.
Thanks, Michelle. Next up, Mike, land use, we might as well do all of them. Update on
Yep.
Title 21 and housing.
Land use, I think Brian covered everything that's happened at land use land use committee, and there's no other major issues going on in land use topic. Title 21 Chapter 9 review, we cancelled our February meeting. We have a next meeting on March the 9th at 6 p.m. We're looking at any other things in Title 21 that we can change before we get the full force and sort of weight of the area plan rewrite. Most things we'd like to change in there really require a strong commitment, a strong statement from the community, and that's what the area plan rewrite is for. So there are a few things we could potentially change between now and then, but mostly we're sort of in a holding pattern. Housing working group, we had a general meeting earlier on in February. We have our next meeting on March the 11th. March the 11th, we're going to be looking. We have a work session which is going to be looking at short-term rental regulation. We're going to talk about that a bit later, so I'll hold off my other comments until later. So March the 11th, 7 p.m. for housing. Any questions?
Thanks. Public comment. Persons offering public comment must state full name and address. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person, must be on subject not listed on the agenda. All right, go ahead, Christina.
Christina Hendrickson, P.O. Box 978 here in Girdwood, and I am here because I answered a survey today from Senator Kathy Giesel. It is a survey that comes out on her weekly newsletter, which if you are not signed up for, please do. It's a really easy read and a good synopsis of what's going on down in Juneau. And it's just 11 questions. You can get to it directly from her website, but it closes on Wednesday the 9th. It covers topics, everything from how you feel about taxes, how you feel about roads, how you feel about other important topics that are before the legislature right now. And so I highly encourage you to take, it only took me 3 minutes. It's even web-based, so if you go on our website right now, you can quickly go through it while we're going over other reports and answer 11 questions. And there's even a spot for you to provide your own comment. So it's a really great resource for us little Girdwood to be able to communicate directly to our senator, who I will remind you is the president of the Senate this term. Thank you.
Thanks, I filled out mine today.
Good.
Like the email too. My name is Jerry Fox, Fox 111, I work with a tax foundation, AARP Tax Foundation. We provide free tax services to people. We're going to be doing it 2 days out here in Girdwood. The days are going to be Thursday the 19th from 1:30 to 5, and Saturday, that's March 19th, and Saturday, March 28th, noon to 4. So we've been doing this for a couple of years, and we usually get a pretty good turnout.
Under 45 seconds.
Anybody else? Crystal?
Hello, Crystal Hoke, P.O. Box 1134. And so, as Brian mentioned, some of you have been hearing this on a multitude of occasions, and I'm sorry to sound like a broken record. I've been researching community land trusts since about April, and I do feel like it would provide a lot of opportunities for things that we see lacking or needing in the community, and probably most especially affordable housing. So a community land trust or the acronym is a CLT. It's a nonprofit corporation that develops and stewards affordable housing, community gardens, civic buildings, commercial spaces, and other community assets on behalf of the community. So I think generally the conversation's been happening in Housing Committee. Did recently give that presentation at Land Use, but the primary thing that I think we would focus on first is affordable housing, just because I think that's the largest need for our community. There is a pretty lengthy article on girdwoodalliance.org, and it's titled, Is a Community Land Trust Right for Girdwood? And there's a questionnaire that you can fill out, and I would encourage everybody to do that. I've gotten several responses on that I can then pass forward to our GBUS members and land use committee, etc. So again, girdwoodalliance.org is a community land trust right for Girdwood. Fill it out, and we would appreciate the response. Thank you so much. Oh, any questions?
Thanks, Crystal. Anybody else? Okay, going on. 7, Michelle, we decided to kind of postpone vote on the,
Yes. I have one question. Is there going to be action on 15?
I'm gonna ask Mike.
It's informational, I think, unless there may be a status update on the roads as well.
I'm on a consulting clock.
So Michelle, we were gonna postpone 7 till the next meeting, is that correct?
Yeah.
You're in agreement?
Yep.
Okay. Number 8, update on status of $2.2 million bond to build community building to replace existing garage and Little Bears building in California Creek Park. Update on historic preservation efforts related to original buildings.
Yes, so I'll speak from here. We are on the ballot. Let me just slide down here so I can bring this up. Oh boy, we'll get way into this.
Oh, I think you're too far.
Anyways, let me come back to this. We are on the ballot for this April as a bond initiative for $2.2 million for the replacement of, or basically the tear down of the 2 existing buildings over there and the building of a new community-owned building that would house Little Bears and also be more versatile to house other events, weekends and after hours as well for the community. One thing we've heard more about is more art space, and so it could maybe work that way. It just have to be planned out and to be managed by Parks and Rec. But in order to get anywhere near that, the voters would have to approve the bond, and it would require a positive vote from both Anchorage and Girdwood, so the Girdwood service area and Anchorage as a whole, to have the bond pass. That's because as a whole, we share the same credit rating, and so we would have the backing of the whole municipality and an excellent credit rating to get the best percentage rate. And so that will be on the bond, and so it will be in front of the voters to approve at that time. I know Little Bears has been very active in helping to get the word out about this bond initiative, and they're working through that as well in that aspect. From the staff perspective, all we can do is give factual information about it, but we can't campaign for the bond itself. So that's where we're at there. With historic preservation, we have come to a conclusion that we're going to work on several projects. One would be a interpretive display. If the bond was to pass and the buildings were to be taken down, we would do this interpretive display that would go up to commemorate the history that was there with the fire station and then the 30-plus years of childcare that was at that location. And we would also do an oral history project of those who were active or part of those buildings, trying to capture the oral history along those lines. We also recognize that we would do, and we will do this project no matter what happens with the vote, but we will capture photos of the buildings, both day, winter and summer, inside, outside, just to capture the history of them. So that we have that. It's always a good recommendation that if we can retain those pictures down the road, it'd be nice for history to have that in our reserves. And then the 4th thing we're going to do is take try to take the old original water tender and create some sort of exhibit with that. Most likely, probably within Town Square, we try to do more historic pieces within the Town Square Park over there. And if the building was to be taken down, we could reclaim some of the wood and build a structure over that water tender. This is the original water tender that was pulled by the Willie Jeep. It's actually seems smaller than the water that we use now to water the flowers, but it was the first thing you had when you pulled up and tried to put out a fire, a cabin fire. So it's been sitting down on the fire training lot down there for a long time, and we have people who are interested in trying to preserve that piece of history and put in a location so that everybody can get a chance to see it. And we recognize Town Square as an area to do more historical things, because a lot of tourists get right off the bus, they walk in the town squares. That's why we put the 4 different interpretive displays in there, and we like to do more of that within Town Square, to have it as kind of an open-air museum in there so that people can get a chance to understand more about Girdwood. So those are the projects that we're working through, and we'll be pushing forward. And if the bond passes, we'll be probably coming to you with a funding request to do these individual projects as it goes forward, and we'll definitely be coming to you probably with a funding request for the tender to put up as a park and rec exhibit over there.
Question?
2 comments and then another comment. On the last one with the tender, there was a very well organized historic preservation group with the railroad that were friends of the engine that was recently restored, engine like 355 or something along those lines. They took a long time to find exactly who could preserve pieces of that caliber, but maybe a good local resource rather than trying to find somebody on the World Wide Web. So that would be a resource if that one were to come to fruition. And then second, I've been socializing it within all of my networks within Anchorage, but please remind all of your Anchorage friends to vote yes on this bond. We had over 100 people in this room at a land use committee meeting that voted yes for this, and so I know all those 111 people are talking about it in their social circles in Anchorage, but as the date draws near to April, please send out messages and remind people that they will not be paying for this, that we are. We're just riding the coattails of the really good bond rating and taking advantage of that in order to get this center built. So a lot of good work has gone into this, a lot of pro bono design work has gone into it, and I would hate to see it fall flat because we didn't voice our support of it. Thank you.
Actually, a quick comment on your comment, Christine. It's actually not really April we have to think about. There's a burst of voting happens as soon as the ballots are sent out in March. So I don't recall the date the ballots are sent out. I'm sure John knows. But it's early March. Early mid-March. Mid-March.
All right, so get on it, people.
Yeah, mid-March.
I have to have the box out by March 8th.
Right.
And then Jerry Aaron had a comment.
Yeah, no question. You probably told us this before, but what is the plan for all the stuff that's stored in the old fire hall? Like, where will it go?
Well, we will, I've been slowly planning on that, but we will probably invest in a larger shed for what's in there. And then we will probably reorganize what we do down in the industrial park. We have actually a Connex down there that we don't really use. And so we could have seasonal swaps of what we put down there and bring things up. And most likely we'll probably try to designate a spot here within the park that we could have a shed that we can hook to electricity and then have a heated location to bring in and out. So yeah, but that will be a larger discussion. I haven't put a lot of effort in that because I've really been focusing on this project, but that will be a larger discussion for the board as we move forward. We are lacking in infrastructure, like one, a covered sand storage, which is a huge one. Two, a larger location that we could actually like pull a grader into. And there's some options out there. And next week or this week, I'll be working with an engineer just to look at these portable sheds, very common now, and they can take snow load, and that might be a quick solution for us. DOT has one for their big blower down here, and then inside they just have a portable heater that exhausts out. It's a diesel heater and just heats the thing up and sheds off, and they keep all their stuff inside. It has a garage door on it too, so we may be looking at that in the short term.
Any other questions about that item?
Ballots will go out March 17th.
17th, thank you.
Thank you.
March 17th.
It's the brewery's third year anniversary.
So, item number 9. Agenda item LUC 1910-00. LUC recommendation for Girdwood Brewing Company request for GBS residents support for breweries conditional use permit and special land use permit to expand operations to the entire building. Hey, guys.
Hi, I'm Josh Hegna, and I'm here tonight with my partner, Rory Marenko. We're co-founders of Girdwood Brewing Company, and like Jerry just said, we're here looking for a resolution of support for our special land use permit and our amendment to our conditional use permit. This is going to allow us to permit the whole building, allow us to make more beer, allow us to provide more space for our patrons, but in addition to that, it's also going to allow us to hire more people and give back more to our community. For example, Michelle was just saying how we wrote a check for $1,100 and change for the Engine 41 fundraiser for the Friends Avalanche Information Center. Last week, we donated $1,600 for Abby Savvy campaign. And so, yeah, we're just, we're here tonight to tell you we're committed to being responsible business owners, being a good neighbor, and hiring locals and supporting local nonprofits and small businesses. So Rory can kind of fill you in on the timeline of everything, but appreciate your support.
Okay, so as listed in the agenda, or in the packet rather, Monday, March 2nd is our amendment for our conditional use hearing in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then the following week, Tuesday, March 10th, is for the special land use permit amendment, which is just what allows us to serve alcohol on the property. We've posted the posting affidavits, or the placards on the building or on a tree, visible from the highway, and sent those posting affidavits in 21 days in advance as required. So we're taking all the right steps, checking the boxes on our way. So appreciate your guys' support. We couldn't do it without a great community like Girdwood. So.
You guys have any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Well, I have a question. So does this include, you say like using all of your space, but it also includes food vendors, or has that already been resolved?
The food truck issue is separate, and that's going to be coming up and be made in this ordinance, so that's completely separate from this.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
When is that coming?
We'll be determined.
Okay.
It's working its way through finance.
Okay.
I don't have any questions. I think the brewery's a good community member, a great economic resource for the community. We've all been surprised. I think you have too.
Lots of surprises.
A lot of support customers you have. It seems to be pretty busy. So we have a resolution in front of us. I would entertain a motion from somebody to read it.
I so move.
Does that mean you want to read it?
Do you want to read it? Rock, paper, scissors?
I can read it. I can read it.
I got one later in the agenda.
I might have one.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, Resolution 2020-04 of the Girdwood Board of Supervisors. A resolution in support of an amendment to conditional use permit and amendment to special land use permit for alcohol, brewery, for the Girdwood Brewing Company, LLC. Whereas the Girdwood Board of Supervisors is recognized as the Girdwood Community Council, ex officio, with the Girdwood Land Use Committee as the recognized one person, one vote representative body of the citizens of the Girdwood Valley. And whereas the Girdwood Brewing Company, LLC, has presented at the Girdwood Land Use Committee and at Girdwood Board of Supervisor meetings in pursuit of expanding brewery operations to the entire brewery building and has received substantial support from the public attending those meetings. And whereas the Girdwood Brewing Company, LLC, has successfully navigated proper channels to amend municipal code for a text amendment to add manufacturing general line item to table 21.09.1050-1 to place a C for conditional use permit required in the GC 10 column for this purpose, and for the existing conditional use permit 2016-25. And whereas the Girdwood Brewing Company LLC business has been successful for the owners, offered year-round employment to a dozen locals, and has provided a new and unique location for community members to gather, and now requires more space in order to manufacture, package, and sell product to a thriving market. And whereas the Girdwood Brewing Company LLC has met the contact requirements with neighbours, has disclosed and resolved concerns brought up by the public in the course of amending the conditional use permit and the special land use permit, and whereas the Girdwood Land Use Permit has recommended this GBOS resolution of support by a vote of the public attending the regular meeting of the Girdwood Land Use Committee on February the 10th by a vote of 15 for and 0 against, with 3 abstaining. Now therefore be it resolved that the Girdwood Board of Supervisors supports the amendment additional use and amendment to special use permit for alcohol brewery to include the entire existing building for use by the Girdwood Brewing Company LLC. Passed and approved. Second.
So did I hear a second? I think we've got a second. And so...
I'll second if not.
Okay. Further discussion?
I just have a question. That line that talked about the public, were there any concerns that anyone had? Okay.
Initially, there was parking that was brought up, so we worked with the architects to fit as many parking lots, as many parking spaces as we need for the expansion, so we don't need any variances or anything like that to get a permit.
Oh, you're asking for the muni side? Or the public
Just
side?
public
The
side.
public has not made any comments.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, no public.
Yeah, that was, the muni was the part.
I'll make a comment. You guys have been good at following this process, and the process at times I know is very cumbersome, but I appreciate all the time and effort you put into following the processes that are there. So, appreciate it. I know it's cumbersome. So, hearing no other, I would make a motion, or let's call for a vote. All in favor?
Five zero.
I'm sorry, the trumpets are still on order.
Well, thank you, everybody, we appreciate it. We'll bring it down. Thanks.
Okay, number 10, discussion of 2020 GBS budget and first quarter revisions. Kyle Kelly.
Yes, sorry, just trying to pull this up.
And we're looking at our packet here. Is this part of this discussion?
It's in this packet.
No, you're gonna pull it up on the board.
Sorry.
I think you're too far.
Sorry.
Move out of that. Can't see. With glasses or without, just can't see.
Okay, so we're looking at two requests on revision. First one is under the police. Sorry, I got this new system drives me crazy. Makes me want to go backwards. Under police, we're asking for a change. Let me go back to it here so I know what I'm talking about. Okay, so under police, and I'll open this up so everybody can read it. Just getting to it. It's a small change. Due to towing cars and the things that we might be dealing with, more street signs that we want to purchase for parking, I'd like to increase that by $5,000 from $5,000 to $10,000 there, and just have a little bit more room. Certain years we've bought in devices like the lead control kits and things like that, and have gotten very close on that budget. This budget's very tight because basically all the money either goes to the rental that we pay for the substation over there, or for the monthly payments to the police department itself, to Whittier. And so I like to request 5,000 more because if the towing thing is going to become more active and pushing that, we need to be prepared to pay for it. Especially if we tend to end up, in the past, we never got a bill for the abandoned cars, but that was probably because of poor management in the towing companies that we used. But this towing company is very responsive, and I know they're going to charge us. But in the past, I would pay $200, almost $300 for a tow sometimes. sometimes. So just having more room there, and then to deal with the different things. Traffic was hemming and hawing about doing the no parking signs on Garmisch and things like that because their budgets are so tight. And I said, well, if I can come up with funds, will you help with this? And they're very agreeable to do that. So it would just give us more flexibility in that area to deal with it. So that's what we're looking for there with police. Any questions?
Yeah. I mean, that seems reasonable. I know the discussion has come up in the past. There's been talk about mobile speed, sort of one of the mobile speed measurement things.
Correct.
Display. Is that just something we're still considering in the future, but not for this year?
No, I mean, we could pursue it. I am going to pursue that on Alyeska Highway. Because they said as part of that funding source, they would reimburse us for the purchase of those.
Right.
I just want to find out who's going to maintain them for the future.
Right.
Because that becomes a territorial thing, and the area-wide funds that take care of our sign shop here, I know they're not going to be supportive about working on Alyeska Highway speed signs. And so if I can get Scott Thomas to agree to also maintain them, then we may be able to do that.
Are you talking about a fixed sign or the mobile one?
Oh, the mobile one. No fixed signs out there. But the mobile one is something that we could still explore. That's something that we would just have to work with Whittier Police on.
Okay.
And DOT.
Do we have a cost estimate for that?
No, I haven't actually looked into that at all.
And I know the Whittier Police Chief had looked into it, and he was maybe had one that he was looking at moving around.
Yeah, there was, the reason we were looking at the one that moved around, the mobile one, according to the Brit next to me, is the one that we would put up, mobile. So we end up, would have it, and I remember the PSAC meeting in particular, we wanted it like for Slush Cup going up the highway, or for Forest Fair coming and leaving town to just kind of to help remind people that they're within zones. And then even out on Crow Creek Road during busy weekends where they would go through that residential area so that we could have it in targeted spots would be fantastic.
Maybe even timberline for Virgin Creek weekends as well.
Yeah, exactly. So something that maybe just rent for the summer. I don't know what the cost benefit analysis might be to purchase one and then stow it and have it for when we want to grab it, or if it's something that we could rent.
Yeah, I mean, I can look into it. I haven't done any research on it, so.
When do we have to approve these numbers?
We could delay these numbers till next month. Yep. So I can look more into that and come back with that.
I wonder if the Muni would have any of those sitting around.
We've asked, but they have a limited supply, and they're assigned to Anchorage Police Department, so they use them as they need. So Michael Palka really looked into that with Forest Fair, trying to get one for the street out here.
So Kyle, the police department tows this vehicle and you pay them back? Is that why
The service area tows the vehicle. The police department helps me tag the vehicle, but it's really the service area who's asking to have the vehicle tagged and moved. So most of the time I recognize them, especially from a street maintenance aspect, that like right with snow removal, we can't get around these vehicles. So I'll do all the tagging paperwork, and then I have to have an officer by law tag the vehicle, take pictures, create a case number, and then they send it back to me. And then from there, I handle it for them going forward.
What if we approve the 5,000 tonight, and then if we wanted to do more next time, if we had more information on the speed limit signs? I don't know. Just throwing it out there to the board.
I don't think we should segment it. I think we should look at all the numbers at once. That's what we usually do as a group.
I can bring you the expense and I'll be looking at the expense of buying one. So,
Yeah, the CBA of renting versus owning.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to postpone this one till next meeting.
Till next meeting. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, let's see here. The next one. All right, so with Parks and Rec, and let me just show you here, what we're looking at is two changes. One is that we had a standard line of about $3,000 for the hand tram, and that covered most of our annual expenses, which was possibly a new rope, some parts and pieces that we needed for it. Going forward, we need to have more funding available. And there's two ways to do this. One is that we can, within our operating budget, which is taxed for, we can do the increase there, which would be, we feel we need $25,000 for the hand tram to deal with that. And part of that could be several options. One, it could also give us a little bit more room in the budget for having a person work for us more than 32 hours to help us with operational coverage, which basically is response. If some incident happens out there, either mechanical or human incident, we have somebody who can respond and help process what the response needs to be. For the most part, I'd cover that full time right now, and on the weekends, having somebody who can do that. We're also working with our partners to have a list of volunteers who can also help fulfill this role. The big thing would be all the improvements, the new nets, the new rails, signage, things along those lines to be built and installed out there. We will hire a contractor at the very least to install the safety nets out there, so we know that they're properly done and installed, and then maybe work with a volunteer team or work with the contractor to put the railings in to help with that. And so we are proposing $25,000 in there, and then some of the funding, whatever may be left, go towards a bridge study for the replacement, or for the alternative crossing of Winter Creek and Glacier Creek there, excuse me, for the issues that we're dealing with the hand tram. As a department, we feel strongly that we can't ignore the volume loads of people going out there, and that a trail alignment study, a bridge alignment study needs to happen out there, so that we know, is it possible to put a bridge? It's all hearsay, it's all people's personal opinions, but we need to get something like that taken care of. And I think this summer is one to do it. And if we don't have enough funding, then we probably have to tap into our capital fund to cover that expense. So either we can take all the money from the capital fund to fund these improvements, or through taxation, through our annual budget, we can come up with basically a starter fund to get probably 1.5 of the 2 projects done, and then take the other funding from capital to complete that. I'm estimating that a trail alignment study could be $20,000, $25,000, depends. Because you're gonna have a surveyor, you're gonna have somebody who's gonna do the whole study. It's gonna take a lot of field time to figure that all out. Could be more, just the way we go. Probably more.
Yeah. There'll be engineering involved at that stage as well, so.
Yes, they will have to give us some sort of idea how we would build a bridge.
So you're proposing a design, really, not just a feasibility study?
Yeah, I think one, it has to answer, like, could we put a bridge in? Where could it be? And then 2, what would that bridge look like? So it could be a two-phase aspect to it.
I'm not 100% sure the community is clear that they want a bridge. So I think going all the way to a design and spending a decent amount of money on design, to me, seems a little premature.
That's why I would probably do it in 2 phases.
Yeah, I'd have phase 1 of just feasibility. Here are potential options.
And here is a good foundation to put a bridge across.
Yeah, but to roll this back, the 25 would just be to acquire the materials and install the safety improvements that the Girdwood Trails Committee has talked about for the past 3, almost 4 meetings, and voted in support of putting forth the design. I mean, it's been talked about in exquisite detail in each of those meetings, and there's been a lot of really great community feedback, lots of really good questions, as well as just usability, everything from where to put the hooks, whether or not to have a gate, to not gate, and the type of webbing that's going to be used. So I think the $25,000 is a little bit on the high end. I think I heard it's somewhere between 17 and 20, but depending on when we need a welder to come out and do any work with us, or if we need to do any additional signage, I think the 25 is right-sized for the amount of effort that Kyle and a variety of other community members have already fed into this process so that we could open this to the public this spring.
So I have a comment on, there seems to be three things here. First one that I support is getting somebody to help on the weekends. That's the first issue we got to deal with. And then, you know, people in the community don't know, but 3 times Kyle last summer was on some sort of trip and called back here. Once for a frayed rope and then twice for 2 incidents with people. And I mean, he went down to Cooper Landing, drove all the way back to replace the rope one morning. And so it's very disruptive to your life. And I think we need to do something so that doesn't happen. We need to have somebody around here, you know, like your part-time employee or whoever, that could fill that gap. And then the next thing is the modifications to the existing safety issues. And the third thing is the feasibility study. To me, the feasibility study should come out of the capital account, because it's kind of a capital deal. The other two could come out of the operating budget. The feasibility study, I would really want it to be a very basic feasibility study, because I have a feeling the cost is going to be prohibitive, but maybe I'm wrong. And I don't think the community is going to want to pay, you know, $1 million for a bridge. And so...
No, you're making the exact same comments we've heard at the Girdwood Trails Committee meeting. We would like support for Kyle and for Margaret to ensure an equitable work-life balance and working through the partners, as he said, like with having people on call or trying to figure out some sort of paid person to stand and take that phone call should there be another emergency, whether it be maintenance or otherwise. But I totally support those two coming out of operating, and I definitely support a preliminary feasibility study, however 30,000, 50,000 foot we might want to look at coming out of the capital account. But that would be within the next budget cycle, I understand.
I think we can choose to spend from the capital whenever we want to.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
I was going to make the point that, so I disagree with you slightly, both of you, that capital improvements, the hand tram, strike me as should coming out of the capital as well. I think the change from operating should be, any increased cost in maintenance and cost of staffing. They're clearly operational, but we're not going to be adding new, welding in new frames and adding new safety improvements every year. So it's a capital.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So really, it's whatever the change should be to cover, weekend cover, and any increase in maintenance. There will be an increase in maintenance because we have more stuff there. Correct. I'm sure.
I don't care what color money it is, as long as we get it done.
So, do you have any idea what the cost to just get a part-time person to work weekends?
Well, I mean, right now we run a person, it's about $7,500 a year for 32 hours. And so if we went full-time, what happens is when we go full-time, we have to start paying full benefits under union. And so it could easily increase $10,000. So it could be $17,000 for having that person on. So I think $17,000 would cover our expenses for that seasonal person in that aspect, and then probably we continue with the $5,000 for our just general maintenance needs. Even just $3,000, so $20,000 in that aspect.
So, the numbers are going around here.
Yep.
So, to me, what we would do tonight was maybe approve $10,000
Correct.
increase to the operating budget.
Correct.
And maybe some amount of money coming out of the capital account for the changes for the safety for the hand.
Sure. So we can, the way I understand it, we can do the safety improvements and the study, if we decide to go forward with the study, out of capital.
Right.
Okay.
Well, we can vote on that when we actually have a cost estimate.
Correct.
We don't have to do that now.
Yeah.
So my question was about, I didn't understand your numbers there. Are you saying it would be an additional 17,000 to have?
No, so I already have budgeted, I think actually I have 8,000 already in my labor account. No, I have $7,900 right now in my labor account, so it'd be another 10,000.
Another 10,000.
Yeah, so I would say that we, instead of going from 3,000, we go to 13,000 for this line.
Okay.
Does that include additional maintenance we might have with the new stuff?
Well, I think we'll just stick with the 3,000 if we,
For now.
I have no idea what the additional maintenance, operationally, the system works well. And so, I don't see us making any big changes. We'll probably fly the cart out just to have an inspection done, but I can work within this budget line for it. I have 2 rolls of new rope right now, so I know I'm not buying new rope because I bought that rope last spring. And so, or last summer, right before the second incident. So we're good on rope. That's expensive.
Is it realistic to assume the seasonal person will be able to handle these roles?
So it'll be very washed down what the seasonal person does. They will go out there if there was a major incident with an individual. I've already talked to the fire department about this. Those two were teamed together to retain information. I've talked with Whittier Police. Whittier Police, if they can, and when they have for the last 2 incidents, they will send an officer out as well to help with that. The key thing that the seasonal person will do is most likely determine, does this need to be locked up? And then they will know how to do that. That will also be what if our seasonal person for some reason, that day is sick, we will also have a call tree of volunteers who can come out there and they'll be trained how to lock it up, take pictures, and follow a simple log about what to do in that aspect. And so after the first incident, we kind of got a better system on it. And on the second incident, we had Whittier Police out there. They were there on the first incident, but on the second incident, I had them more engaged in interviewing people as they're going down the trail, getting more information, trying to understand the scene. And then in both incidents, they wrote a full report that we depended on for what happened with the accident. And then I wrote a full report, inquiry about the operation of the tram itself. Was this a tram issue? Did a rope break and somebody got snagged up in it? Those type of things. So I addressed all those. So I think when we go forward, we'll continue to do that. And so the seasonal person will just have to run through a checklist and see what's going on with that. And also the volunteer if an employee couldn't be there.
It strikes me that the seasonal person now has 2 completely different responsibilities and different roles. And I would imagine hiring for one you're not guaranteed to get the skills necessary for the other. So you're looking for somebody with, the right level of responsibility and ability to sort of take management responsibility for the hand tram, and everything else is a maintenance role. For maintenance and support of the other park area. To me, they seem like 2 completely different roles. I'm wondering why we're adding basically upping the hours by 1/3, upping the cost by 125% to roll them together when they seem like 2 disparate positions. Is there some reason why we can't hire someone just for weekend cover during the summer?
It gets really complicated when we try to create a new position through the Muni at this stage. We probably should have addressed that in the fall, trying to add somebody in.
Even though that helps with their concerns about the hand tram?
Well, yes, but I still want to work with that person 3 days of the week or 2 days of the week if I can. If I just hire somebody on the weekend, we're always gone. And that person, I have a person in mind that probably will work out for it. It means that we may hire somebody and they may not be a good fit. We may get a whole set of applicants and I just say, you're really good at doing this side of the job and I need to figure out a different way to support the hand tram. Because it is the nature of the job is that it's a seasonal position, the level of pay that we're paying, we're just looking for a person who can go out there, respond, and lock it up and do the report. And So,
Seasonal person we had last summer, would they have fit?
yes,
But we don't know if we can't guarantee.
we don't know if they're going to come back.
Yeah.
So it's always a challenge. You know, we had 3 applicants last year for this job, and he was a great fit. And probably at first, it would have been a lot more hand-holding with him, but over time, he totally got it. And he was actually helping me with hand tram stuff, doing weekly inspections and things like that when I couldn't go out there.
I don't know if they're really that disparate. I mean, we have this person oversee how things are functioning in other areas of our assets, such as the playgrounds and tennis courts, and, you know, I think it fits under maintenance of, and overseeing of our assets as a community.
Are they also making a decision about whether to lock up the tram and things like that? Are they actually making a decision, or are they just?
Most likely, they're just going to lock it up. If I can't be with them on the phone to discuss it, they're locking it up. Right. That's what's going to be if I'm within cell range and I can understand what happened, and we can get a good description, but I'm going to probably say 90% of the time I'm going to tell them to lock it up until I can get on site to look at it.
Yeah, I understand. So it's similar to the maintenance.
Yes, and that's the same thing we ask of a volunteer, is if a volunteer calls and takes it, most likely if you get that phone call, your one goal is go out there, lock it up. Yeah. And then send me pictures and anything you know, so I can at least have some sort of understanding as I walk into it.
Okay.
So, I think what we're looking at is to add $10,000 to the hand tram budget for the seasonal worker to work more hours.
Correct. So I'm going to put 10,000 into this.
And for the next part of the deal, where we're talking about safety improvements to the hand tram and a feasibility study, could we maybe have you get more information and come back next time, and we'll take it out of the capital account? Or does that make sense?
Yep.
So I'd entertain a motion to add 10...
Actually, can we just cover the turf and trash contract with the
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
So,
Before we move on to that, there was a question.
I was just wondering, you're saying 10,000, so you're only adding 7,000 to this?
correct.
Okay.
7,000 increase.
Okay.
And then the turf and trash contract. Right now, our turf and trash contract was at $6,000, which was, I don't know how the guy survived. And we're going out to rebid with him, and I know that, and we're simplifying this contract even more. And so we would like to increase it so we're just prepared to pay for the bids when they come in. We saw the other contractors come in at 85 to 10,000 when we bid it 4 years ago, and so we just want to make sure we're in the right spot here. So, I mean, he did it for 6,000, and I swear each time we talk to him, he's like, I don't even know how I afford to do this. He must have said that every time, and I was like, why did you bid it this amount? So, but he did the job, so it is what it is.
So we're just right-sizing it.
We're right-sizing it. We're just preparing ourselves. Hopefully they come in low, but man, when they come in really low, that's when we have the hardest time. So,
I'd like to make a motion
We're listening.
to approve 10,000 for turf and trash contract, to approve 10,000 for staffing for hand tram to come out of the operating budget. Oh, and the additional 5,000 for the towing sides and wildlife disposal as necessary.
And now the extra,
I thought we were not doing the police this
Yeah,
time. We're
we-
just doing.
Oh, okay.
Just doing Parks and Rec.
so this is Parks and Rec.
So can we change it to reflect the amount that we're increasing it by,
Right. 7,000 and 4,000.
right?
yep.
I amend my motion to 7,000 and 4,000, excuse me, 4,000 and 7,000 respectively, based on the way I said it.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Further discussion?
I just have one question, kind of what you were asking. I was thinking you said that it might cost 17,000 to get more hours for that person.
So I already have 7,000 in the budget for him.
So we would need 10,000 additional?
Yes.
Oh, you need 10,000 additional.
See,
So that would be,
we said 7,000, that's where we're getting around in circles here. We need 7,000 additional or 10,000 additional?
excuse me, 10,000 additional, sorry.
That's where the number.
Yes, you're right. So this should be 13,000.
That's where now we're talking.
Sorry.
I'd like to amend my motion to reflect the yellow boxes on the screen.
And the yellow boxes are an additional 10,000 and an additional 4,000.
Correct.
Yes.
And we have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote. All in favor?
Okay, thank you. Let's
And
wait.
then we'll come back to the police next.
And we'll come back to the police, and we'll come back to
The
the capital.
capital when we get to that point. Okay. It doesn't have to go into the first quarter budget revision.
And do you have any other first quarter revisions?
Nope, that's it.
So is that, I think we're done with that topic. Number 10. Number 11, GTC, request for GBOS, resolution of support for a KMTA grant application for Trails Project. A lot of acronyms in there.
In the interest of time, this has been voted on and approved by GTC. We heard about it during our report from Kyle. We've already read it. I read it at the last meeting.
So we have something we're supposed to read. Yeah, here it is, right?
Do you want me to read it again?
Please. Well,
Can I just ask a question first? So the area you're working on is up to and including the start of the boardwalk, or is it cover the boardwalk and steps, or?
We'd like to go as far as we can.
Okay.
So if we can, stretch the gravel to go up past the boardwalk, then we will. But our primary area is that first section, to get that done.
And is that first section all on, is that land all owned by the trust, I believe?
Yes.
Okay. I think there was some question as to whether the parcel, they started doing some development on actually cover that area.
It borders up against the parcel, but I think there's even still a vegetation barrier between the private parcel there.
Private parcel, thank you.
Yep.
so do we need to read this in? I think we do, don't we, or do we?
No idea.
If we ever need to, we need to.
Probably need to.
Okay. Do we need to have a motion before I read it?
Read it, that'd be-
You read it, it will be the
All
motion.
right. Resolution 2020-05 of the Girdwood Board of Supervisors. A resolution in support of KMTA grant application for Virgin Creek Falls Trail Network. Whereas the community of Girdwood has trails to meet all ability levels of various lengths and with a variety of historical significance, which are enjoyed by residents and visitors to our community. And whereas because of its short length, relatively mild elevation gain, and picturesque terminus, one of the most used trails in Girdwood is the Virgin Creek Falls Trail. And whereas the community of Girdwood voted to add the Virgin Creek Falls to the Girdwood Valley service area in 2017, allowing the Girdwood Trails Committee and the Girdwood Parks and Recreation to spend taxpayer funds on work on the trail. And whereas the volume of hikers on this primitive trail have caused braiding of the trail, exposure of roots and other tripping hazards, and significant degradation of the primitive trail tread. And whereas the Girdwood Trails Committee voted unanimously at their February 4, 2020 meeting to designate the Virgin Creek Falls as their priority project in summer 2020, indicating their dedication to bringing the trail to the level as outlined in the Girdwood Trails Management Plan. And whereas the Girdwood Trails Committee can apply for a grant from the Kenai Mountains Turnagain Arm National Heritage Area, KMTA, to work on aspects of the trail and can match funds with those received from private donations, in-kind donations, and municipal funds. Whereas the Girdwood Board of Supervisors, GBOS, appreciates the commitment and longstanding relationship with KMTA and the pursuit of our shared goals in the community and youth involvement to increase public awareness and appreciation for the natural, historical, and cultural resources of the heritage area. Therefore, the Girdwood Board of Supervisors supports the Girdwood Trails Committee grant application to KMTA for trail work on the Virgin Creek Falls Trail, passed and approved by a vote of X to X on this 17th day of February 2020.
Need a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
Question. So you said it's trust land, or what did you say? Is it HLB land, or?
It's not HLB land, I think the very...
Great Land Trust.
That section is Great Land
Right.
Trust, yes.
Okay.
There is HLB land to, the falls themselves, I believe, are on HLB land. but this section
Falls
is
themselves
not.
are on HLB.
Do we need to get permission from Great Land Trust or anything for trail work?
Yeah, Kate
Okay.
Sandberg has been working through that,
Okay.
trying to get the support.
Okay.
And one of my good friends runs Great Land Trust, so.
So, ready for a vote? All in favor? Next up, hand tram, number 12, hand tram safety measures. Introduce safety measures recommended by Girdwood Trails Committee for additional safety infrastructure and signage. Discuss hand tram management options. I think we kind of did the second one, didn't we? So, we have in our packet, though, we have, you want to go ahead, Kyle?
Sure. Basically, what we want to focus on tonight is the possible management structure, and I think we're narrowing in on two here that we're going to try to go forward with. One was this multi...
Can I just ask a question about scope here? So are we not going to discuss the safety measures tonight?
We can also discuss the safety measures tonight. I need to pull them up. I didn't.
Okay, thanks.
The multiple agency support aspect is what we're going to follow, where Girdwood Parks and Rec continues to be the sole manager of it, and we're going to push forward on partnership with both the U.S. Forest Service and Alyeska Resort and Girdwood Fire and Rescue for the support of the facility out there. The U.S. Forest Service is definitely on board. Probably in a non-official way, but through our existing MOU with them to provide response volunteers to help with the parks and help with the incident. If they'll probably be on our call list, like described earlier, to go out there and close down the hand tram if we need. There's 3 or 4 individuals who have already stepped forward to say that we can do this in that aspect. We are going to draft the MOU and present it to Alyeska Resort for their continued support with the mechanical operation of it. I've talked with legal. They feel they can write it, which would, in a way that would relieve Alyeska Resort of the liability associated with giving support to this, put it back on the MOA in the sense that we're just seeking volunteer help to help us continually out there. Alyeska Resort employees have done an excellent job so far being stewards out there and volunteers to help keep that hand tram running out there. And Girdwood Fire and Rescue just recently stepped up and said they would be more than willing to help with investigation or things along those lines in case I couldn't be there, or in the end a MOA employee couldn't be there to help with that, especially if it was a human incident out there, because they're most likely on response to the hand tram to deal with that, and can get there fairly quick now with their new e-bikes and other options. So we're going to pursue this and go directly with it. I've already started the draft of MOU, and I'll probably work with Brian at Alyeska Resort to present it to them and have them review it and then go that route. And also additional staffing from Parks and Rec. We're going to see what we can do to work to get the 40 hours for a full-time employee to come out there and be on staff with us. And so they would probably work with us 3 days a week, Margaret and I, and then, or 2 days a week, and then 2 days on the weekend when we're off, and be assigned projects around here most likely, and then be available in case something did happen to respond out there. This still doesn't alleviate us of the fact that the tram does run 24 hours a day. And so there are night times and things like that. And so that's where we'll be we'll really need that list of volunteers to be out there. We plan to host a training in the spring with the volunteers and staff to get them up to speed on what needs to happen. We have everything on site out there. You just have to open the box. There will be a checklist that you follow, and then you go through to, like I say, most likely shut it down and close it up. And then from there, we'll make the decision what we need to do next to reopen it in that aspect. We're hoping that we don't have to address this, but it's a reality out there, and that tram is what it is, and the other aspect of it is that we can't deny that it is a very popular resource for the community. So those are the routes we're following. The other concepts that we had in here was possibly contracting out to a management team, the management of the hand tram. I just think that feasibly, cost-wise, this isn't responsible for the taxpayers. I think it's a very expensive option to have somebody that's on standby who's a contractor and is ready to go in response to it. And that aspect. I just don't find that to be a good approach to deal with this device. And then, the status quo that we have now is not sustainable. And so I think working with these two other options, mixing them together, we're going to give it a try and try to work it out and see if it's something that can work for us into the future.
For clarification, one of the differences between 1B, the status quo, the possible multi-agent support, the plan we're looking for here, is the inspection. So are we still using a licensed third-party inspector? Okay, so that's true for both.
That will not go away. And so part of status quo is still.
I wasn't sure if Brian was doing that.
No, we are actually going to try to, through these last two incidents, we were able to work with the MOA elevator inspector team, and they have a guy who was a tramway inspector for the state for many years, so he's very familiar with this, so we will work with them. We used to work with Dave Wilson, who is the head of lift maintenance down at Vail now, but he was basically one of the guys who built that whole tramway out there, and he's certified in the state of Alaska. If he's available and within state, we may use him as well, but most likely we'll probably work internally.
And my other question was, when discussing the whole issue with the Muni risk management team, do they have an opinion on what we should do in terms of management?
Well, I know the risk manager wanted us to shut the whole thing down.
Right.
And
that's their recommendation.
Yes, but the administration wanted to work through this and come up with a solution because they understood the importance of the hand tram to trail users in the community. And if we could find ways to make safety improvements and a better support for the management of it, then they like to pursue it and see how it goes. I will be presenting all this back to them again, and there's also a new head lawyer for the municipality as Wendy is leaving, and so, but they have fully briefed the incoming staff about this, and so they should be aware of it. So I don't think they'll probably have much to say, but we'll see.
Thanks.
So I think we've discussed.
You can need letters in support of granting this variance.
According to Margaret, no.
Have we seen any letters that actively want that section of road to be upgraded to collector standard, or have we just seen letters that object to a high-density development there? Because I've only seen comments really on the latter.
How are we going to go forward?
So I think, sorry.
Could we, sorry.
I'm just thinking process, but please, content.
Could we say that, what I'm hearing is people don't want them to just be able to build what they want, not have to upgrade the road. Could we say that we want it upgraded to some standard, but not this one because it doesn't make sense for Girdwood, or?
That's what the conditional use process would be. So everything we're asking for would be given, well, not given to us, but everything we're asking for is part of the next step if they choose to do that. Mm-hmm. What's happened here is, I believe, and I haven't heard any really compelling contrary evidence, what's happened here is a separate issue of upgrading the road to collector standard is being used to try and stop the development, which I understand why. I mean, that's what it is, that's what it's being used for. Nobody is actually in good faith arguing they want the road upgraded to all of the issues of the collector road standard. So any variation of that would need to be, variance would need to be granted, even if we're just saying we want it paved the current way. So can I make a process suggestion?
I would suggest in absolute good faith, everybody said that they wanted this letter of objection drafted.
That is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is nobody has argued that they actually want the road to be, they actually want the road. If money could come down from, magic and had nothing to do with the development, if the development wasn't there, they want that section of road or any section of road upgraded to the same level.
Well, we're not talking,
that is exactly what we are talking about.
I know, so you and I have a different logic in the way we understand. So that's just, we're not going to, Mike, we're not going to come to some consensus here because I disagree and you disagree with me. So There is no consensus.
I think what's in front of us is the question about the variance of building to collector road standard. That is what's in front of us. We know there's other issues behind it, but what's actually in front of us is a single thing. What I was going to suggest by process is, since LUC has voted to send a letter of objection, we should probably vote on that as a group of 5. And if we agree with it, then we use either this or some variation that's drafted based on this. So we can then go away and finish off drafting it and send it. If we don't vote to send the letter of objection, then we have another discussion to finish off, but to continue with, whether we do something else or do nothing.
Okay,
Motion to extend.
thanks. Second? All in favor? Okay. Mike has a suggestion, so...
In fact, I'm going to make a motion. My motion is that, I'm going to vote against it. My motion is that we send a letter of objection along LUC's suggestion, LUC's vote. And this is a draft version, and I'm happy to work with anybody else to change this so it fits what everyone's happy with. But it'll be basically this. There might be some wording changes or an extra paragraph, but this is the essence of it.
Okay. So now I need a second for it to go any further.
For what? Hold on, what's happening?
What's happening is, Mike has suggested that we vote on the letter of objection that has been written, that is kind of consolidating what the LUC said.
Yes.
And if we vote to pass it, then we pass it. If we vote not to pass it, then we have to figure out what we're going to do.
Okay, I understand.
And so we have a motion, and we have a second. Any further, I had part of the further discussion of explaining it.
Well, I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around opposing or not opposing a variance when I don't know what the rest of that means. What's in that variance? What would... So it's really hard. Usually a variance is very specific to what you'll be doing. Like, I'm building this much of a retaining wall on this road, and that's the variance I'm looking for.
Can you bring up the IEAR? Can you bring that up in code? Because there's a really great visual.
Well, I understand, but that means that's what the code is, but go ahead.
I'll give an interpretation of what I think is going to happen. So if this passes and they go to the planning board, and the planning board weighs this letter heavily and denies their variance, the developer has a couple options. They come back and they work with the community to find something that is suitable. And I don't know what's going to take there. You know, I agree with Mike, there's probably got to be some answers about what the density of the place is going to be. And that was my recommendation from a maintenance perspective, was that we don't feel like the developer should get away with doing nothing.
Right, that's
that they should do that, and that they should do something for the, or they just go and they find a financial way to make this work, and they develop the road section to the code standards, and so that 100 and something feet will be to that standard. Or
only if they develop to that over 5 density.
If they do anything other than a single-family home, they have to develop it to that standard.
Correct.
So if they put 2 units on there, or 3, or even up to the 5 they can do under, without having to go through conditional use, they still have to
Now have to go through conditional use.
Yeah, so they can, if they wanted to put 2 units on there, they have to, according to code, go through.
But realistically, they're not going to do that.
Of course not, it doesn't make sense.
So it doesn't make sense. So realistically, what'll happen is, if we vote for this, they'll come back, it'll come back to us,
That's
and
the most reasonable thing to do.
we can say, what are you going to do? You know, what is your development plan?
And I feel like that's what the community has voiced.
I don't think the community has really, the community in the broadest sense has said anything about it.
Oh, I see.
I think the community, the local neighborhood has, and rightly, because it's going to affect them most.
And I would say, at the last land use meeting, there were 3 people that walked out that were not local neighbors that were upset. And one specifically to me said, not nice things about this person because they weren't even here.
Yeah,
they didn't even show up.
I agree not
And
to.
those people were not neighbors. Those people were community members. Long-time community members. I just 2 of them, but not 3, 2.
Again, no requirement for that person to be here.
Yeah, it's the right thing to do, though. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah, right.
And the other part of it is we have as a board, we have said we want roads, not Aliaska Highway, we want side roads to be brought up to this standard. And I don't think we do. I don't think anybody on this, the five of us does.
We're setting a precedent.
But we're saying we do, which is, it's a bad faith argument, basically.
Well, the whole thing is not very, all of this whole way of going about it.
Which is why a
variances,
letter
but
of
that's why-
non-objection with the content from the community as rightly outlined in the community letters that we've received, included in a packet with that explanation, would be most suitable for this really convoluted process at this juncture. Because we're looking for answers we're not going to get until the conditional use permit process.
Exactly, all the questions that have been asked and all the things we want would come through the conditional use.
I
If
still
they
understand
decide on more than five.
why can't we still do a letter of objection, but say that we want to see that first? We're objecting until we see the conditional use.
It's part of the process. You go for just like the brewery, you did the
You have to do
variance.
this first?
Yeah, you have to go through your variances first, and then you come back with your development plan for your conditional use permit. It's two separate processes. It's not a mom or dad or grandparents. It's A plus B and then C.
And so what I'm seeing here, though, is there's two different ways to look at it. One is just process. And then the other one is, how do we get these people to come back and talk to us?
Yeah.
And one way is to approve this letter of objection. Because if they don't get a variance, they're going to come back and talk to us.
So there's collateral damage in doing that.
The collateral damage is,
But just saying, what we're doing as a body is first of all, we're going through a bad faith argument. We're saying we want something we actually don't, which is not a responsible thing to do.
what I want is I want them to come back and say, what are they going to do to help upgrade the road?
Well, if they have more than 5 units
Yes.
or in any circumstance.
No, if they have more than 5 units.
That's part of the conditional use process.
Yes, that's what
See,
you.
we're going around in circles.
Yeah.
Because
Like, you said that nobody in the community wants the road to have collector status, and that may be the case if they stay in condition of this, the growth rate that it has been growing. Now, if all these lots all of a sudden got a variance to build maximum density, maybe we would want a road to collector status.
you wouldn't want that road to be collector standard, I don't
What's
think.
that?
I don't think you'd want that road. The reason that's a collector is because it was part of
Other
it. Sorry.
DR1 lots along that same, I own one at that.
Right.
Right? So now if I wanted to ask for conditional use variance and I want to put a fourplex on that lot instead of just one house, then all of a sudden I've got, more traffic, and all GR1 lots along that.
Along that
stretch
section.
there, they could all build out they could ask for conditional use permits and then go to maximum density at that point.
How many are left? How many lots are there that are empty along that section?
I think there's
Not
7
many.
lots for
7, right? I can't remember. I know that was in
But the
that was
real
in
reason I think this was a collector was because the idea was the 43 acres would be developed.
But
That's my house.
In the area plan, the reason it's a collector is because it's a road, it's effectively another loop that goes all the way around the valley, up to the Winner Creek Resort, Upper Winner Creek Resort, Much Mountain Resort, and then comes back down the other side and follows basically the trail line.
Yeah, and it was with the idea that you're going to develop those 43 acres.
Well, that was only a small part of it. It was really to provide access to a much, much larger development and more housing across the whole valley.
'Cause I mean, like-
it was within a general plan of having, I think, over 10,000 residents by now,
Yeah.
and significantly more development than we have.
But like the sewer ran all the way to the end of Sprott into the middle of the woods there, past my house. And why they put the sewer there? Well, they were expecting to go further at some point.
Yeah.
And another point, so if, this may be a question, but you said, we should be actually bringing this point up during the next meeting in Anchorage for the zoning variance. That sounds to me like we're making concessions that basically, and we've already accepted the fact we're getting the zoning variance. If we're having to make concessions for the road after that.
You mean the conditional use of the increased density? Yeah. I don't think we're doing that at all. In fact, that's what I'm saying. If we were writing a letter of non-objection, it would reflect the fact that the community very strongly doesn't want high density there. So that should be part of any, if we chose the other part of the letter of non-objection, we wouldn't be objecting to the very narrow thing of not developing that section of road to collector standard. However, we don't want all the other things we think they're going to ask for. So that sets up the argument for the next time. I think it's a more responsible. I obviously think it's a more responsible path because we're not making bad faith arguments of saying we do want something we do not want just in order to prevent something else.
There is a potential of setting a precedent by which a planning board looks at a multifamily housing application in Girdwood and always requires them to upgrade the road to the full standard.
We have, I'm going to try to keep this moving. We have a vote and we have a second. So, I mean, you want to make a quick comment, Brian?
I'm going to not make a quick comment.
Because you might have time to make another comment. So we have a motion, we have a second. So I'm going to call for a vote.
Wait, I have one more question.
Okay.
I want to ask Kyle, who probably has the best outlook on our roads in Girdwood. Do you think, like, in the long term, does that make sense to go towards, I mean, I'm not for paving, but just like for care of our roads and maintenance costs and all that?
A full design cross-section like they call for, probably not the best sense there. But I tell you, in the last year, I won't deny that I do think about Girdwood needs to consider paved roads with the length of shorter season of winter and the length of more rainy weather and how much grading that we do to keep the roads smooth and the climate, the way it's changing. I do think Girdwood at some point, especially on their collector roads where there's a lot of traffic, does need to consider at some point paving, you know. So, but that's a discussion further down, you know, because we waste a lot of money just trying to keep roads in good shape because it rains so much here.
A timber line, I think, a good example.
Yeah, something like that.
So we have a motion for the letter of objection. We have a second. I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor of the letter of objection? Okay, so it fails. Now
I should say all those against it.
all those opposed. So now it fails. Now. Process.
So here's what you can do. You can call for a special meeting with LEC before this, and I would make it sooner than later so that we're not laying this on the table at the last minute to the planning board, and hash out your differences with LUC. Or you can write, and what I would probably do, or you can write a letter that represents both this letter of objection and the reason why GBOS voted against this letter of objection.
The latter sounds easier, but it doesn't give the public any process to weigh in for if we were to do another public meeting.
So I think it's the role of the chairs to work with the chair of LUC to determine a special meeting that is well noticed, and I would give 7 days to well notice that meeting. You know, you have a right to do 24 hours as a special meeting, but I would advise you to do 7 days so that the neighborhood or the people who voted for this letter of objection can attend.
When's the community room for it next?
We're going to need a bigger room.
And just as...
We can go up to 199.
You know, I'm leaving at 6 in the morning tomorrow morning, and I won't be around probably for at least 3 weeks, so.
When do you leave?
6 in the morning tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So you're trying to hurry up the meeting?
Yeah, I was trying.
When's the next meeting going to be?
That's what we're discussing, when we're going to have a meeting, a joint.
So I will not be able to attend.
I think a joint meeting is the way to go.
But we have GAP on the 26th.
I think that we're open next
I'm
Monday.
gone the 19th through the 23rd, and then I'm also gone the 27th through the 2nd. But any meeting that we would have, I would call in. We've got the community calendar behind you, Mike.
Oh, so efficient. Talking on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 24, 25, 26.
What's the process of the joint meeting? Is there a community vote or is it a board vote?
Community will be able to
Comment.
Community comment.
No votes?
Is it the one property, one vote?
Or one person, one vote?
good question.
That's what I was leaving. I want to comment on that. I want to hear what Kyle says.
I mean, I think it, well, what I would see is that there has to be some sort of discussion and a compromise that is brought together, and then that is put to a vote of LUC to support that. So that's how LUC will let you know if they support the compromise, and then GBOS would also have to probably vote on that compromise. If GBOS once again disagrees with it, then it defaults to the letter, and then that will be the final thing to go forward. So I would say that.
To me, the answer to your question is yes. The community does.
Excellent. So the outcome's going to be the same, just another meeting to take care of it, right?
Exactly. It's going to take us another meeting.
There's one more opportunity to synthesize what we
And
want
then
to
if the
say.
community votes for the letter to be sent, then it's going to be sent. The board will be
The letter comes from GBOS, right? So if GBOS votes to send the letter, the letter gets sent. LUC can request it, but, again, you represent, 14 people turned up at that meeting. I don't know what the vote was for people on here, 300, 400, 500, or something like that. So it's a very different step of representation.
Actually, no, I'm going to disagree with that, and because the land use committee is what granted GBOS the community council status. Okay, we granted that status and made GBOS the de facto community council. But regardless if there's 14 people, or 5 people, or 50 people, land use committee speaks for the community. Just as you 5 speak for the community. The voice of the GBOS does not carry more precedence in this community than land use.
That's why there's parallel outcomes.
Correct.
So what I'm saying is LUC can't make a decision of what GBOS does. You can recommend. We can independently, if we make a decision different to yours, those pieces of information go on. So we never negate what you're doing. But there could be 2 different things.
We did just negate what happened. We did just negate our recommendation for the resolution of objection.
The letter of objection.
There could still be an outcome in the next meeting where we do send a letter of objection. It just might not contain the content. What was voted on was that GBOS were to write a letter of objection. The fact that we haven't decided on the content of that letter of objection is what I think we would be able to coalesce around at our next meeting.
So we're going to be drafting up this. I hear what you're saying, and I'm asking, are we supposed to provide some sort of draft that sort of inlays some of the points that you were making? Because I get what you're saying, it's setting precedents. If we voted for it.
There should be
And it's not what we actually want.
Right, I get that part too. Yeah,
That's why letter of objection is the wrong way to
But to
say.
answer your question, yes, we would do our homework ahead of time because it's always easier to critique than to create. Yes,
Right,
so
okay.
no different than what
date modified.
Margaret was able to pull together for
Right.
Spencer's note in version 1 that we had in our
version
packet.
1, which I read,
Mike
yeah.
then got us a new one today. So there's always an iterative behind the scenes process that takes into account the comments that we receive.
So if you look at item
Turn
E,
around here, you can see. So here's,
What section is this?
this is section, Article 6 voting.
Thank you.
Section E. Well, we didn't get consensus, so here's your 2 options. Not in agreement, no time restriction. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors does not vote in accordance with LUC recommendation, and the requirement is for the report forth on the issue is not time restricted. In this case, GBOS will provide a written explanation of the dissenting GBOS action to LUC and will provide any and all additional and/or new information pertinent to the issue being considered, and request that LUC reconsider their action in view of the additional and/or new information reconsideration issue can be sent back to LUC one time for reconsideration by LUC. The issue in question must appear on the following month's LUC agenda.
So we do have a time restriction.
So you do have a time restriction.
That's if we have multiple months.
Well, we have not in agreement time sensitive as C.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you have to follow this one.
So we provide a written explanation to land use. So this is saying we don't even meet. That's saying you just send.
Oh.
But we have the opportunity.
Correct. Girdwood Board of Supervisors may attend meetings via telephone. Oh, that's F, never mind.
So actually, this says we don't have a joint meeting. We can still ask for one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it prudent to do so.
Unless you want to try to create one, but you do have a time restriction.
We do have a time restriction. I think we should ask for, if the officers of LUC are in agreement, I think we should ask for a joint meeting and try and hash this out.
So,
because we still have the opportunity for getting consensus, I think.
Yeah.
See, and I would disagree with that. I don't think you have the opportunity for consensus.
I'm more optimistic than you are. Well, you'll be gone, Jerry, so A, nobody cares, and B, you won't be the problem.
Spencer will get the neighbors to come.
Yeah.
And they'll vote against it.
And then we'll be able to explain what the issue is.
Yes, and they'll vote against it.
Cal, just out of
In case we send
curiosity,
that parallel
do you have a roster of all of the streets in Girdwood that are collector status designated, potential collector status?
oh, I can.
Yeah, it's on, there's a
Munis traffic site.
There's a file on the Munis traffic site. It's Egeloff, most of the roads that was designated collector don't exist. They were roads to be constructed, like the second access road down thing. All the ones up higher up in the
I'm
valley.
just curious about these roads that we're going to be setting
It does not include Timberline. Oh, well, it's not just the collector, it's all the standards. The way that our code is written, chapter 9, is we have very strict requirements on how roads should be constructed.
Agreed.
Or not just collector, all of them, and they're all much further than we probably want. Elsewhere in the Muni, they refer out to a design criteria manual, which basically allows things can be designated as rural roads. They have a variety of different ways to achieve the same requirements depending on traffic density and the nature of the neighborhood. And there's also a way the traffic engineer can actually say there can be a different solution as well. Our code is, if you fit in this category, you must do this.
Correct. But we're just talking about collector roads. We're not talking about any.
We're talking more generally than collector roads, but collector roads, that's an example of it, yeah.
So that's all we're talking about, is collector roads. So we're talking about.
I don't think we're just talking about that, no. We're not just talking about collector roads. We're talking about a requirement to go to the formal road standards that we're asking for any development in the valley. I think that's what's actually in there. We're not just asking about that section of Sprott, are we?
I thought we were just talking about collector roads here.
We're talking about the fact that the content of the letter of objection could have set a precedent by which plating boards then decree that you have to follow Title 21, Chapter 9's design standards for any and all road development in Girdwood.
Or any and all collector roads.
Any and all, the Chapter 9.
Or go out and get a variance.
What's that?
Or go out and get a variance.
Or go out and get a variance.
And so I've met with the planning department on this issue, and they have had to put up so many variances. They recognize that this standard is something that needs to be revised, but in the order of all the crap that the planning department needs to go through right now, it's about here on the priority. So it is something that they are aware of as an issue, but we're still having to deal with it until it moves up to the priority for them to remedy. They recognize that the standard is too stringent. Kyle?
So for order of procedure here, if we post tomorrow, we strongly recommend a 7-day posting that would have first available day be the 25th. The room space that we have for evening meeting is the 27th is the first available day, or the 2nd. The meeting is on the 4th.
I recommend the 27th to give the planning board time to digest it before having a full week. I am not here on the 2nd.
or the board can make a decision to not have the meeting and then write a letter. So that's what your decisions are in front of you.
Can we do the 24th? It's 6 days, but it's still a significant notice, and Mondays are the traditional day for having both LUC and...
But there's a meeting.
Sorry, yes, I didn't see the 6 p.m. I think it was 6 days. Got it. 27th.
I'm okay with meeting on the 27th. I'm also okay with just writing a letter. But I recognize the public comments we've received. We'll weigh heavily on a lot of people.
I think we should meet in person because there's going to be a mutiny going on otherwise.
No, there are just two things. As Carl said, the practical result of two different opinions being sent up is effectively it's a negative. So that's not a failure. Well, it's a failure of the variance application problem.
Well, it's a failure of the community to reach consensus.
Right.
I'm good with the 27th.
I am too.
Yeah, that'll do.
Mike?
How do we send something to the LUC offices to request it?
Well, I mean,
The chair, I suppose.
the chair here.
Us two.
The chair, are you available?
Ryan, are you available?
Where else would I be? Where else would I be? I'm always up for another meeting.
It's a good job we get paid by the hour, isn't it?
It is.
Very good.
Of course, the rate isn't so good for the...
There's a reason I always
So
read through
can we keep this moving? Can we say that we're going to try to have a joint meeting of the LUC and the GBOS on the 27th of February at 7 o'clock?
Somebody second that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Okay, can we,
We have to be done by 9 because I have a flight that night.
so can we say
We start
that,
at 6.
should we start at 6?
I would really love that based on how much community comment we're gonna get.
Tell me.
Dude, who's gonna give the awards?
We can limit the agenda to one item.
One item.
And I'll be back up there before anybody even...
Well, then, so 6 would be better for you, too.
It's,
Well, it would be, I mean, you,
yeah, it doesn't matter. To be quite honest.
but what about you? You're gonna miss town meeting.
Yeah, the earlier the better, I
It's
guess.
a good thing you get paid by the hour.
Mine too, I don't know if I'm supposed to have, man, these days.
Really, the meeting could be done in a half hour. So you're gonna hear a bunch of people,
Yep.
and then
hear Mike go,
I thought that was me. It sounded like British accent.
So, and can we say that, Mike, you're gonna write something up to try to come up with a consensus letter of non-objection that,
I'll try that as well, yeah.
Can you
I mean, I'll
publish
find out.
that online?
Mike wants to write it in advance, he can.
If you could write it,
I'm happy
publish
to
it
do
on
that.
the notice?
Create a packet for the, if you have anything you want to include.
For the
packet.
community, you
Yes.
know, I think that would probably help.
The other thing I want to do is, because I know that Spencer read this and was okay with it, I think other people were okay with it, but I'll circulate this and see if there's any other modifications to this. We have this on the table as well. I know there's a typo. The dates are wrong.
so we did decide on the time on the 27th? 6 or 7?
6.
6? Okay, thanks.
6?
Yeah.
okay, are we done with this item for tonight? Okay, final item, agenda, short-term rental impacts on the community.
Do you want to give an update on the roadside and then I'll...
Well, coming out of LUC, I need to go back to work with the traffic engineer and see if we can get a seasonal no parking on the street at all. And then a seasonal that allows for one side of the street to be parked on. So I need to work with that. It's not going to be particularly easy to get them to be supportive of that, but we'll see we can go.
Is that something we get to vote on?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was just a recommendation that was discussed at the meeting, and so I'll follow through to see what they say.
So, Aaron, you have an input into this, so do you know what we're talking about here?
Not exactly.
Well, instead of one side of the road having no parking, we're talking both sides of your road having no parking.
Just Echo
For the
Ridge.
winter.
Only
Just in the winter.
only Echo Ridge. Okay.
During the winter,
Because it gets so narrow.
it gets so narrow with the snow. So,
That makes sense.
okay, what else?
The other thing is that the municipality of Anchorage have actually entered into a contract with a company called Host Compliance, which provides services to municipalities around short-term rentals. They provide a service where they identify all addresses in an area, in a locality that are advertising short-term rentals, so basically identify all hosts. They also provide services such as sort of enforcement, sending letters, pulling together evidence when there's enforcement action. And they provide a free service of helping to craft ordinances if you have a contract with them. So I've started talking with them and the planning department around crafting an ordinance for at least Girdwood, which will be probably end up being based on what we do for bed and breakfast. So it'll be somewhat similar to that, but with the requirements the community has said so far they want for short-term rental. And we're going to discuss this in the next housing working group, and then probably bring something forward eventually. The thing of note is the Muni has said because they've contracted with this company, my understanding is that this week, it might even have been 2 weeks ago, last week or the week before, they started sending out notices to properties that have been advertising short-term rentals and have not been paying, or may not have been paying room tax, that don't appear to be paying room tax, to basically ask for more information and inform them they should be paying room tax. So there were a bunch of, I believe there were a bunch of letters sent to this community, some of which were seeking information, some of which were suggesting they hadn't been compliant. I haven't seen the letters, but there will be some churn and some sort of greater awareness, at least, of the compliance requirements within Girdwood.
You're saying that company was sending the letters?
Well, the Muni sends the letters, but yeah. The Muni effectively sends the letters, but maybe the other company mails them, I don't know. But there's a variety of different services. One useful outcome of that is, although I haven't got the numbers yet, is we actually will get from the address identification process that the company has done, we will have at least a number of, an exact number of properties in Girdwood which are being used for short-term rental, which is useful because we've only had guesses before. And now we'll actually have a number that's supported by data. Potentially addresses, but I only care about the number really.
I like having more accurate data, and I'm appreciative of the enforcement.
Yep. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I was going to say the only thing we're enforcing is paying taxes, nothing else, because we don't have any other regulation.
Right, but we're thinking about
We're thinking about that, yeah.
in the future.
In the future.
Makes sense. To adjourn.
Yep.
Second.
It's all hot and heavy.
I don't like this.
Yeah, Jerry, didn't you say this would be a quick one?
What's that?
You said this would be a quick one. I said,
I knew it wasn't. When someone was asking me earlier, I looked at it, I was like, man, we're going to be there till 10:30.
I said, that gunny sack one.
Yeah.
Turn off the mics.
Well, that's what Brett Wilbanks was talking to me about before the meeting here. He wants to finish a plaque on his lot, subdivide, and on that lot on Scrooge. Yeah. And he's trying to get it exactly.